Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome back. We're going to be starting the appendix in Sacred Contracts written by Carolyn Myss. I agonized on how to get this information to you in a concise way, and I thought about leaving it out, but the author mentions it too many times in order to leave this out. You really do need these definitions if you're going to try to figure out your 12 main archetypal patterns. And so while a lot of words in here have more than one archetype attached to it, I realized that a lot of them are words that say, oh, see this definition. So it's not as much as I thought, and I wanted to get it to you, and I'm going to try to run through as many as I can. It goes in alphabetical order from A to W, and I will post them in succession within the next 1 to 3 days so that we can go through all of these before we move on to chapter 6. It just makes the most sense, and I feel like I'm leaving something out that you actually really do need. So let's go ahead and get started. This is referred to as the Gallery of Archetypes. Space limitations make it impossible to list all of the most common archetypal patterns in detail. Many of these overlap to a large extent, and so I have included related archetypes in the heading of the dominant listing. E.g., an artist can also be a musician, artisan, craftsperson, sculptor, weaver. If you relate to a variant not listed, say the photographer, then simply substitute it. I've tried to provide a few examples of each archetype drawn from popular films, fiction, drama, myths, religion, folklore, or fairy tales. You can probably come up with many more on your own, a process that can be helpful in determining your connection to a given archetype. Volumes of information can be written about each archetype, as they are complex forces that cannot be fully represented in a brief entry. The descriptions provided are the result of the work I've done with people and my own observations of their patterns as expressed through their work with this tool, combined with their examination and interpretation of their life experiences. Each archetype represents a fundamental learning experience or process that is meant to guide us throughout our lives. In evaluating whether a particular pattern is part of your intimate family of 12, pay special attention to whether you can perceive a continuum of this learning process in your history, rather than just isolated incidents. So is this something that shines through a lot, or something that just peeks through every now and again? Never evaluate your connection to an archetype by the obvious. You have to stretch your imagination and burrow into yourself to discover your life patterns, lessons, and gifts. This inner knowledge does not surface easily. If you feel that you have an archetype that is not listed here, describe the patterns of behavior that you identify as archetypal in nature and come up with examples from the arts or mythology. All right, so the first definition we have is the addict, or the conspicuous consumer, glutton, workaholic, see also gambler. Every one of us is touched by the addict archetype. The only question is how much of our lives is consumed by it. Besides the usual suspects, drugs, alcohol, food, and sex, one can be addicted to work, sports, television, exercise, computer games, spiritual practice, negative attitudes, and the kind of thrills that bring on adrenaline rushes. In its positive aspect, this archetype helps you recognize when an outside substance, habit, relationship, or any expression of life has more authority over your willpower than does your inner spirit. Confronting addiction and breaking the hold that a pattern or substance has on you can impart great strength to your psyche. Discovering the empowerment that comes with perseverance has a lifelong impact, becoming a reference point for what you are able to accomplish. In the words of one former alcoholic, I know now that if I can quit drinking, I can do anything. From a symbolic perspective, the shadow aspect of the addict represents a struggle with willpower and the absence of self-control. People who are extremely intellectual or emotional frequently have a close link to this archetype because they struggle to balance these powers. Without this internal balance, the will may give up its power to an external substance that exerts authority, providing shadow over your life. The shadow addict Addict, compromises your integrity and honesty. Many addicts, for example, steal as a means of supporting their habits, amongst other things, yes. In evaluating your connection to the addict, review how many of your life's challenges concern an external substance or a consistent domineering pattern of trying to maintain order in your life. Although that challenge is a part of all of our lives, the degree to which an addiction controls you and your lifestyle determines whether the addict is part of your intimate family of 12. For instance, you can be inconsistent in your exercise program, yet quite disciplined in your spiritual practice. Needing a substance or practice or person so intensely or regularly that you compromise relationships, finances, integrity, character, or emotional and psychological well-being, however, indicates that you should look very closely at this archetype as a possible choice. Now some film examples. Jack Lemmon and Lee Remick in Days of Wine and Roses, and in parentheses it says alcohol. Ben Stiller in Permanent Midnight, heroin. Dom DeLuise in Fatso, food. Claire Bloom in The Chapman Report, sex. Drama, A Long Day's Journey into Night, Morphine by Eugene O'Neill. Fiction, The Basketball Diaries, Heroin by Jim Carroll. Under the Volcano, Mescal by Malcolm Lowry. And Religion/Myth, Soma, Vedic god of intoxication, as well as the intoxicating drink itself and the plant from which it's made. Tantalus, a son of Zeus and king of Siplos in Greece. He was invited to share the food of the gods, but abused the honor and was punished by being tantalized for all eternity by food and drink he could not reach. Now we have the advocate, which could be attorney, defender, legislator, lobbyist, environmentalist. Coming to the defense of others is one manifestation of what Ram Dass calls compassion in action. The advocate embodies a sense of lifelong devotion to championing the rights of others in the public arena. People who relate to this archetype have recognized early on a passion to transform social concerns, specifically in behalf of others. Symbolically, they are dedicated to inspiring the empowerment of groups or causes that are unable to be empowered on their own. By comparison, archetypes such as the hermit are clearly more personal and lack the advocate's fire for furthering social change. The advocate needs public expression, even if only through writing or artwork. The shadow advocate manifests in false or negative causes or in committing to causes for personal gain. In evaluating your connection with this archetype, you should ask yourself how much of your life is dedicated to social causes and a willingness to take action. Films that are examples: Paul Newman in The Verdict, Spencer Tracy in Inherit the Wind, Julia Roberts in The Pelican Brief, and Aaron Brockovich. Robert Duvall in the Godfather trilogy, which would be the shadow aspect. Television, Perry Mason, L.A. Law, and The Practice. Fiction, The Devil and Daniel Webster by Stephen Vincent Benet. Fairy tale, Puss in Boots. And the religion or myth, David, in the Hebrew Bible, the Jewish champion who slew the much larger Goliath. Hakiam, a pre-Islamic deity of southern Arabia who administers justice and oversees arbitration. Next, we have the Alchemist, or wizard, magician, scientist, inventor. These archetypes share the common trait of converting some form of matter into an altered expression of itself. The wizard and magician produce results outside the ordinary rules of life, whether causing people to fall in love or objects to disappear. Whereas a wizard is associated with supernatural powers, the magician tends to be seen more as an entertainer. The alchemist is associated with vain attempts to turn base metals into gold, but in its highest manifestation, it seeks complete spiritual transformation. You may identify with this archetype if you are interested in a path of spiritual development that is aligned to the mystery schools or study of the laws of universe. From this perspective, Nostradamus and Isaac Newton could both be classified as alchemists. The shadow side of these archetypes are found in the misuse of power and knowledge that comes through them. Seduction and trickery brought about through magic and wizardry play on the desires of many people to transform their lives. For the alchemist or wizard to be one of your circle of 12, it needs to be associated with your physical life in some significant way. Perhaps your work or living situation demands that you be especially inventive or interventionist on a regular basis. The shadow wizard manifests either as the use of ingenuity for criminal or unethical purposes, or as feelings of superiority based on high intellect. And films that represent this archetype: Spencer Tracy in Edison the Man, Greer Garson in Madame Curie, Anthony Michael Hall as Bill Gates, and Noah Wyle as Steve Jobs in Pirates of Silicon Valley, which is an HBO, it's on HBO Video, it says. Fred McMurray or Robin Williams in The Absent-Minded Professor, Katharine Hepburn in The African Queen, Jane Powell in 7 Brides for 7 Brothers, Jeff Goldblum in The Fly, which is the shadow aspect, Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen, shadow aspect, in X-Men. Fiction: The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho, The Mists of Avalon by Marion Z. Bradley, the Harry Potter series by J.K. Rowling, and Alice's Adventures in Wonderland by Lewis Carroll. Drama: The Miracle Worker by William Gibson. And now some religion and myth examples. Excuse me. We have Merlin, wizard and prophet involved in every phase of King Arthur's life, from conception to rulership, who also counseled him as king. Césaire, magician who became the first queen of Ireland. Tezcatlipoca, an Aztec god of night and material things, whose black magic mirror made of obsidian or hematite reflected the thoughts and actions of humanity and could kill enemies. Paracelsus, the 16th century Swiss alchemist and physician, who described humans as the microcosmic reflection of the macrocosm. Hermes Trismegistus, a Greek mythic figure who served as messenger of the gods, but who in later esoteric thought became a master of reality manipulation, able to travel freely between the various realms and dimensions. Then we have Simon, the Samaritan magician in the book of Acts, 8 verses 9 through 24, condemned by the apostle Peter for offering to buy the power of the Holy Spirit from him. And then we have Suyolak, a gypsy wizard said to know all medicinal cures. And fairy tales, we have Rumpelstiltskin, who spun straw into gold. Angel, otherwise known as the fairy godmother or godfather. Angels exist in a category unto themselves because they are thought to be living beings of light and messengers of the divine. Almost every cultural and religious tradition on earth features angels of some description, including belief in a personal guardian angel in the Jewish, Christian, and Islamic traditions. Angels are typically represented as winged beings who intervene in times of great need or for the purpose of delivering a message of guidance or instruction from God to humans. Even though you probably aren't an actual angel, you can acknowledge a strong connection to the angelic realm, as noted in people who have a dedication to representing the presence of angels. Artists who paint their images, for example, authors who write about their interaction with humans, and those whose lives in some way provide a channel through which their presence is physically manifested, exhibit a rapport with the angelic realm. Some people are also referred to as angels because of the loving and nurturing qualities of character that they embody. One may also play the role of a fairy godmother or godfather by helping someone in need either anonymously or with no expectation of any return. The shadow side of this archetype manifests through people who make claims to be in touch with angelic guidance for the sake of control or ego enhancement, or who act innocent or angelic to mislead others about their true nature. From a biblical perspective, the shadow angel is frequently associated with Satan or Lucifer, but the devil or demon should also be considered as a unique archetype. representations in films. Herbert Marshall in The Enchanted Cottage, Charles Coburn in The More the Merrier, Mary Wicks as Aunt March to Amy in Little Women. Oh, so Mary Wicks Little Women, the movie Little Women. The two angels in It's a Wonderful Life, Marlon Brando in the Godfather trilogy, which would be the shadow aspect, Danny Glover and Kevin Kline in Grand Canyon. Television, Touched by an Angel, that's an old show. Fairy tale, Glinda in The Wonderful Wizard of Oz by L. Frank Baum. And religion/myth, Angiras, the Hindu angels who preside over sacrifices. Uriel in rabbinic lore, the angel who wrestled with Jacob. Gabriel, archangel who appeared to Mary in the Gospels and recited the Quran to the Prophet Muhammad. Sijil, in Islamic angels overseeing the heavenly scrolls. Tenshi, Japanese angels who are messengers of the gods and helpers of humanity. Lucifer and Iblis, in medieval Christian and Islamic belief, respectively, evil angels who work to destroy human souls. Fravashis, ancient Zoroastrian guardian angels who guide the souls of the dead to heaven. Ombwiri, a tribal guardian angels and ancestor spirits in Central Africa. Athena, goddess who frequently comes to the aid of Odysseus in the Odyssey. Now we have artist, otherwise known as musician, author, dramatist, actor, artisan, craftsperson, sculptor, weaver. The artist archetype embodies the passion to express a dimension of life that is just beyond the five senses. The artist psyche is animated with the energy to express it into physical forms. The nature or relative grandeur of any form of expression is irrelevant. A chef can be as much of an artist as a painter or landscaper. The signature of artists is not in what they do, but in how intense their motivation is to manifest the extraordinary. Doing what you do in such a way that you create an emotional field that inspires others also indicates the artist energy at work, as does the emotional and psychological need to express yourself so much that your well-being is wrapped up in this energy. The shadow artist comprises many cliches, including an eccentric nature and the madness that often accompanies genius. The starving artist represents the fear of financial ruin or the belief that fame and fortune come only after death, which often causes artists to suppress their talents. In evaluating your relationship to this archetype, recognize that the need to bring art to others, such as dedicating part of the energy of your life to supporting artists, is as much an expression of the artist archetype as actually holding a brush in your hand. Films: Ed Harris in Pollock, Alec Guinness in The Horse's Mouth, Isabelle Adjani in Camille Claudel, Kirk Douglas in Lust for Life, Gene Kelly in An American in Paris. Drama: Amadeus by Peter Shaffer. Fiction: A Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man by James Joyce. The Horse's Mouth by Joyce Carey. Fairy tale: Geppetto in Pinocchio by Carlo Collodi. And religion and myth: Pygmalion, sculptor of Greek myth who brought the statue of Galatea to life. Shen Nung, one of the three noble ones of Chinese mythology, who invented the plow and taught humanity the art of agriculture. Basa Huan, in Basque lore, a wood spirit, who taught humanity the art of forging metal. Sarasvati, a Hindu patron of the arts. Ta, Egyptian creator god and deity of craftsmen, said to have molded humanity on his potter's wheel. Ambat, a Melanesian hero deity who taught the art of pottery. Ixalu, a Mayan water goddess who invented the art of weaving. Hero, Polynesian hero who introduced humanity to the art of writing. And Hephaestus, Greek god of the blacksmith's fire and the patron of all craftsmen. Now we have athlete, otherwise referred to as Olympian. This archetype represents the ultimate expression of the strength of the human spirit, as represented in the power and magnificence of the human body. Because the Olympian is so connected to spiritual as well as physical strength, a code of ethics and morality is associated with the archetype, which is an excellent example of the universal power of the psyche of an archetype. A link to the athlete should not be evaluated by whether your physical skill is on par with that of professionals or whether your body is in perfect form and function. A person dedicated to transcending the limits of a physical handicap qualifies as much for this archetype as the professional or artistic athlete. Because the development of personal willpower and strength of spirit is a requirement for the body to manifest its perfection. The shadow aspect of athletics, however, may manifest as a misuse of one's strength against any sort of person or opponent in the world, even outside the field of professional athletics, such as a professional boxer who starts a bar fight. A false sense of invulnerability, like that of Achilles or Samson, dirty play, or colluding with gamblers. The shadow may also appear as a lack of honor that compels you to cheat to win. And some films: Esther Williams in Million Dollar Mermaid, Burt Lancaster in Jim Thorpe, All American, Tom Courtenay in The Loneliness of the Long Distance Runner, Daniel Day-Lewis in My Left Foot, and also he's in Hoop Dreams, which is a documentary. Fiction: The Natural by Bernard Malamud, Hans Brinker and the Silver Skates by Mary Mapes Dodge. Folklore fairy tales: The Tortoise and the Hare. Religion, myth: Atalanta, female athlete in Greek myth. Smirtios, a Celtic war god portrayed as a bearded athlete. Nike, in Greek myth, feminine personification of victory who runs and flies at great speed. Samson, a Nazarite strongman and biblical judge. Achilles, Greek warrior known for his exceptional might and the hero of the Iliad. Then we have Avenger, which can also be an avenging angel. This archetype and its related manifestations respond to a need to balance the scales of justice, sometimes by employing aggressive techniques. Attorneys who work for the impoverished or disadvantaged, or who volunteer part of their time for pro bono work, are modern avengers. Bringing war criminals to trial or legally pursuing corporations that harm society are examples of the Avenger on a global scale, fueled by a sense of righteousness in behalf of society. One can also be motivated to avenge an injustice against oneself or one's family. The avenging angel is an expression of this archetype of mythic proportions that suggests that one is on a mission from God, as in the case of Joan of Arc. On the global level, the shadow manifests as avenging perceived immoral behavior by resorting to violence, from acts of eco-terrorism to bombing abortion clinics. The rightness of one's cause can never justify harming innocent third parties. Gandhi countered the shadow of social vengeance by emphasizing passive resistance to illegitimate authority. In evaluating your connection to this archetype, review your life for experiences in which your primary motivation was to defend or represent a cause on behalf of others. One instance is not enough. You need to relate to this archetype as a primary force through which many of the choices and actions of your life are directed. A burning desire to get even can be so forceful that you can organize a lifetime around meeting that end. Films that are a good example: Ingrid Bergman in The Visit, Jane Fonda in Cat Ballou, John Wayne in The Searchers, Antonio Banderas in The Mask of Zorro, Jane Fonda, Dolly Parton, and Lily Tomlin in 9 to 5, Vincent Price in Theater of Blood, and this is the shadow aspect, an actor who kills his critics, Al Pacino in The Godfather, also shadow, Robert De Niro or Robert Mitchum in Cape Fear, shadow, television, The Avengers, drama, The Oresteia by Aeschylus, Aeschylus, Hamlet and Macbeth by Shakespeare, fiction, To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper S. Lee, religion, myth, The Furies or Erinyes, avenging spirits of Roman and Greek myth, Bastet, an Egyptian cat-headed goddess who is the instrument of Ra's vengeance. Durga, vengeful warrior goddess of the Hindu pantheon. And Kali, Hindu mother goddess and symbol of destruction, who annihilates ignorance and maintains the world order. Now we have the letter B, and there are not very many of them. So we start with beggar, which can also be a homeless person or indigent. Completely without material resources, the beggar is associated with dependence on the kindness of others, living on the streets, starvation, and disease, whether in New York City or Calcutta. It is easy to believe that the archetype of the beggar is solely a negative one, but that is an illusion. A person need hardly be starving for food to be considered a beggar. People beg for attention, love, authority, and material objects. We throw a dog a bone to give a powerless being a treat of power. From a symbolic perspective, the beggar archetype represents a test that compels a person to confront self-empowerment, beginning at the base level of physical survival. Learning about the nature of generosity, compassion, and self-esteem are fundamental to this archetypal pattern. Films: Patrick Swayze in The City of Hope. Fiction: Oliver Twist by Charles Dickens, The Prince and the Pauper by Mark Twain. Nonfiction: Meeting the Madwoman by Linda Shearshee Leonard, PhD. And religion myth: Lazarus, the beggar in Luke, section 16, I forgot how to exactly say it, verses 22 to 23. Who is carried by the angels to Abraham's bosom after his death, while the rich man outside, whose gate he begged, went to Hades. Yeta, a Japanese beggar who may be a disguise for Inari, the god of food or goddess of rice. Odysseus, who disguised himself as a ragged beggar when he returned home from Troy. And Lan Kai He, in Taoist myth, one of the 8 immortals, who dresses in rags and roams the street as a drunken beggar. Then we have bully or coward. The archetype of the bully manifests the core truth that the spirit is always stronger than the body. Symbolically, our physical bodies can bully our spirits with any number of reasons why we should back down from our challenges, which appear to overwhelm us by their size and shape. Your relationship to this archetype should be evaluated within a framework far more expansive than evaluating whether you bully people. Consider whether on your life path you confront one experience and relationship after another that appears to have more power than you, and ultimately leads you to ask, will I stand up to this challenge? People are often called to take on bullies for the sake of others, as David did in David and Goliath. And this is another criterion of your connection to this archetype. Conventional wisdom holds that underneath the bully is a coward trying to keep others from discovering their true identity. Symbolically, the coward within must stand up to being bullied by his own inner fears, which is the path to empowerment through these 2 archetypes. Films: Matt Dillon in The Bodyguard, Jack Palance in Shane, Mel Gibson in Braveheart, James Cagney in The Fighting 69th, Burt Lahr in The Wizard of Oz, Jack Nicholson in As Good as It Gets. Fiction: The Red Badge of Courage by Stephen Vincent Benet, and fairy tales: Jack and the Beanstalk and Jack the Giant Killer. Now we've already read through the child archetypes. Let me see how many we have for the letter C. Oh, okay, I'll read C because there's only one since we already read child. Clown, otherwise known as the court jester, fool, or dummling. The clown archetype, oh wait a minute, did I skip one? No. Is associated with 3 major characteristics: making people laugh, making them cry, and wearing a mask that covers one's own real emotions. The clown is generally male, with few women playing the role, either in literature or the theater. This may well be explained by the social attitude that associates weakness and loss of control with the man who expresses emotions. Therefore, the man has to wear a mask, which often portrays a crying face. The clown reflects the emotions of the crowd, making an audience laugh by satirizing something they can relate to collectively, or by acting out social absurdities. In general, the messages communicated through a clown's humor are deeply serious and often critical of the hypocrisy in an individual or in some area of society. Because of the mask he wears, the clown is allowed, indeed expected, to cross the boundaries of social acceptance, representing what people would like to do or say themselves. The court jester or fool is the manifestation of the clown in a royal setting. Since no one can possibly take a fool seriously at the physical level, he is allowed entry into the most powerful of circles. While entertaining the king with outrageous behavior, the fool is actually communicating messages that the king trusts. Political satirists often have dominant court jester archetypes, revealing the motivations of the highest officials in the nation in a manner that is generally granted freedom from the legal retribution that might be leveled against an ordinary citizen making the same comments. Related to the fool is the Dummling, the fairy tale character who, although often simple-minded, acts with a good heart and is usually rewarded for it. Modern film characters such as Forrest Gump and Nurse Betty embody this aspect of the archetype, which is not so much impart wisdom as foster living with kindness and simplicity. The shadow aspect of the clown or fool manifests as cruel personal mockery or betrayal, specifically the breaking of confidences gained through knowledge from the inner circle. In reviewing your relationship to this archetype, consider your use of humor in association with power. Since everyone is prone to jesting, you are looking for a connection to a pattern of behavior that is fundamental to your personal protection and survival. In distinguishing clown from fool, note that the fool is connected to arenas of power, while the clown does his best work as an everyman, like Ralph Cramden on The Honeymooners. Reflect on whether clowning around is an essential channel for expressing your emotions over and above simple play. Ask yourself if, like the fool, you carry truth into closed circles or closed minds. Now we have some films. Danny Kaye in The Court Jester, Buster Keaton in The Navigator, Sherlock Jr. and The General, so he played all of those. Charlie Chaplin in The Circus and the Gold Rush, Giulietta Messina in La Strada, Barbra Streisand in What's Up, Doc, Renee Zellweger in Nurse Betty, Woody Allen in Zelig. Drama, He Who Gets Slapped by Maxim Gorky. Opera, I Pagliacci by Leon Cavallo, Literature, Don Quixote by Miguel de Cervantes. Gimple the Fool by Isaac Bashevis Singer. Holy Fools and Mad Hatters by Edward Hayes. The Autobiography of Henry VIII with Notes by his Fool, Will Summers by Margaret George. And Religion/Myth, Mullah Nasruddin, aka Hoja Nasreddin, a Sufi figure in Egypt, Iran, and Turkey, half saint and half fool, who acts like a ninny to teach wisdom. Sir Dagonet, the fool of King Arthur, who was knighted as a joke, but who also performed bravely in tournaments. Heyoka, in Lakota Sioux lore, someone who does things backward to teach people not to take themselves too seriously. And Coyote, in Native American lore. Then we have the last one, Companion, also known as friend, sidekick, right arm, or consort. The sidekick's qualities of loyalty, tenacity, and unselfishness are the positive aspects of this archetype. A sidekick/companion provides a service, symbolically speaking, to a personality that often has a stronger nature or a role in life that carries more authority. Secretaries and personal assistants are examples of right arms, taking care of the day-to-day details of life. You might have an inner companion that takes care of the details and allows another archetype to focus on work central to your mission. Companions are associated with providing emotional rather than sexual support. Platonic or friendship bonds are more in keeping with that particular archetype. Betrayal is a common example of the shadow side of the companion, which damages the soul. Some films that represent this archetype: Eve Arden and Mildred Pierce, The Lady Takes a Sailor, and The Kid from Brooklyn with Frank Sinatra and Montgomery Clift. Eve Arden in Mildred Pierce, The Lady Takes a Sailor. And then the next one, The Kid from Brooklyn, and then Frank Sinatra and Montgomery Clift in From Here to Eternity, Susan Sarandon and Gina Davis in Thelma and Louise. I love that movie. Now we have television: My Friend Flicka and Lassie. Drama: Iago and Othello by Shakespeare, which would be the shadow aspect. And religion/myth: Damon and Pythias. In Christian lore, two young men whose loyalty to each other won their freedom after Pythias was condemned to death. Then we have Enkidu, companion created by the gods for Gilgamesh, a natural man who proved a perfect match for the godlike hero king. Then we have Ares, E-R-I-S, Greek goddess of strife and constant companion of the war god Ares. Apis, holy bull worshipped in ancient Egypt as the companion of the creator god Ta. And then Nike, Greek victory goddess and companion of Athena, goddess of wisdom and war. All right, so we had A, B, and C. And hopefully in the next video, I can do D, E, and F, and maybe G. I'm going to try to do as many of these as I can, but again, I don't want the videos to be too crazy long, and it's also a lot of reading. My voice is ready to give out. So we're going to stop right there, and I will post this right away so you have it, and I will post one or more of these a day until you have them in your entirety to refer to. I hope you find these helpful. Really, I do. I find them very helpful in helping myself figure this out, so I figure this has to be helpful for you. So I will see you again soon for the next portion of the appendix going over our archetypes, okay? I love you all very much. Take care of you. Take care of those around you till I see you again. Bye-bye.